Hello and welcome to Cake Doctor. Well, as you know, I'm Ceri Griffiths and one of my expertise as a doctor is roll icing. I've had lots of requests asking how to make roll icing. Now there are plenty of premixes out there on the market, but what I want to do is I want to show you how to make roll icing from scratch. I use icing sugar, some of you call it confection sugar, some call it powdered sugar, lemon juice, and I'm using egg whites or the egg albumin. All I've done is I've cracked eggs, separated the yolk from the white. The white is the albumin is what we're going to use, and I'll talk about each of those as we go forward. But before we start, I know when you're making roll icing you may not always have a video in front of you, you may not always have your iPad or your technology to view. So what I've done is on the roll icing section of the Cake Doctor blog, I've actually written and printed, and it's a downloadable free handout on how to make roll icing. The only difference here is on the very last section I've referred to glycerin, because if you're coating a cake in if you're coating a cake in roll icing, then the addition of glycerin will make the roll icing softer and crumble when it's dried out rather than drying out completely solid. Now there is a bit of a caveat on that. If you're coating cakes, then it's fine to use glycerin in the mix. If you're doing pipe flowers, string work, extension work, run out, flood work, any of those, I wouldn't add the glycerin, okay? But in this video I'm making just regular unadulterated roll icing. So let's talk about a few things we've got here. Okay. This is powdered sugar. Powdered sugar, icing sugar, confectioner sugar. It's the consistency of talcum powder. This is what we're talking about. Now there are companies out there who do premixes where all you do is add the water. Some of them actually do have coloured icing so that when you mix it up it will already be a certain colour. But we're working with white here because that was what I used as a basic. So that's that one. Next, lemon juice. In this glass I've got 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. You can use a measure or you can just use a regular teaspoon as I've done here. It's an approximate. It's 2 teaspoons. It's the acid in the ingredient. This is lemon juice. I haven't squeezed a lemon. I've gone to the local store and I've just bought lemon juice in a bottle or one of those little squeezy containers. You can use that. If you do have real lemons, all I would say is once you squeeze the lemon, pass the lemon juice through some fabric or something, or maybe a tea strainer, just to make sure there's no bits in it. There's no problem using real lemon juice or pre-bought lemon juice. That's not lemon cordial or lemon squash. It's actual lemon citric from the fruit. There's a reason why it's in there, and that is because when it's combined with the egg white, it helps align all the proteins up. This isn't a science lesson, but just know there is a reason for it to be in there. Now, third and lastly is actually egg albumin or egg white. Now, in the recipe I have weighed this. This is actually, we have 60 grams, it is 60 grams. And what I've done is I've separated my egg yolk from my egg white. This is the white, the albumin. I've weighed my glass and zeroed it on my metric scales, and then I've weighed 60 grams. I've done it that way because if I say 2 eggs to you, then someone may pick up large eggs, someone pick up medium eggs. Eggs in Britain might be a different size than somewhere else in the country. So I know that by weighing it as a gram measurement, you have an exact measure to do. Now, deafened. Something else we need to talk about too is everything that you use needs to be grease-free for roll icing. Grease will destroy roll icing, so make sure you've given everything hot soapy wash. Now, I have a machine here. I'm using a Kenwood Chef. I use Kenwood Chef a lot. I've used it ever since my college days. That's what I'm using for this. You can use any stand-up bench mixer. You can mix roll icing by hand, but you'll have arms like Popeye at the end of it. So go ahead, get a bench mixer. Do not try to use a hand mixer, because as you do it, it's going to vibrate and possibly injure your wrist. Also, it might burn the engine out because it's not meant to be for doing roll icing or things that strong. If you're looking as an indicator to buy a bench one, if it's strong enough to make dough and it would have a dough hook with it as one of the adaptions, then it's strong enough to do roll icing. Okay? Now, the other thing we need to talk about is we use a beater. Now this is a K beater because obviously it's Kenwood. Whatever brand you've got will have either a K-beater or a paddle. We're looking for one of these. Don't use a balloon whisk. If you use a balloon whisk, what will happen is you will incorporate far too much air within the roll icing and it'll be pretty much useless for what you want. Slow and steady with a paddle is what you need. There are paddles out there that have a silicone blade around them. I personally don't use them. I would rather stop my machine and scrape down the mixture as you're going to see me do. However, it's your choice. If you've got one with a silicone blade, go ahead and try it. I don't know how effective they are. Never used one with roll icing. So let's get on with the process. Now, first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to put my egg whites directly into my bowl. And then I'm going to put my lemon juice directly in with it. Now I do that because what I want to do is to break up the egg white slightly. As you know, eggs, when you crack them, some bits are thicker, some bits are thinner, some bits are watery. You want to get that all a bit looser. I also use pasteurized eggs. I don't know whether you can get pasteurized eggs in the country you're in, but in Britain we're lucky enough to have pasteurized eggs. The trouble is that if an egg isn't being cooked, then you've got the possibility of problems with the egg white. But in this process I'm using pasteurized, okay? If you're using your own eggs from, say you've got chickens, be cautious, you can't tell. A healthy egg doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy because it's come from a healthy chicken. If you buy from a supermarket or a big market chain, you'll probably find they are sterilized, pasteurized, not sterilized, pasteurized, okay? So I'll put this on, I'm just gonna let this run for a little bit. I'm not trying to create meringue, what I'm trying to do is break up the egg white a little bit. That's probably enough. So if I tip that up to the camera, you can see it's a bit of a slurry now, but it's a lot what I would call looser. And by looser, I mean is the egg white isn't as stringy, isn't as doughy. The next thing I do now is I put all of my egg whites in there. Cloud of death. All of them in there. Let's give that a wipe out because I'm going to need that later on. Now, if I was to put this directly onto my machine now, you would have this massive cloud of icing sugar going all over the place. You don't want to do that. That's spent a lot of time cleaning up. What you do is leave it sit for a few minutes and then come in with your spatula and actually just mix it through until it's a bit of an ugly sticky mess. But what you're trying to do is to get the sugars to start being dissolved by that albumin lemon mix. It takes a few minutes. What you could do is you could just put this on, go away for a minute or two and come back and it will have started dissolving it. But this is just a really good way to prevent it all blowing all over the place. So I'm just cutting my palette knife spatula through the mixture. As you can see, it is coming together. It's a little lumpy. Let me just stand this up so I can do this quickly. Right, it's going to come together in sort of a breadcrumby type effect. So if we look here, see it's no longer a powder, it's a bit lumpy. At this stage it's fine to use. Scrape that back into the bowl. We don't want to lose any. Now, anything less than 500 grams of raw icing, 500 grams of icing sugar, which this is to make roll icing, is probably too small to do on a machine because the beater won't be able to reach the bottom of the bowl. Below 500 grams of icing sugar, I actually do it by hand. 500 grams and above, I do it by machine. So put my machine bowl on, bring it down. Now I'm going to turn it on to a slow speed. Now the reason we do slow is because firstly we don't want a big cloud of dust coming out at us, and also when the icing sugar is first absorbed by the sugar, it's actually quite a tough mixture. You don't really want to be harming your engine on your mixer, you don't want to burn the engine out, but just by letting it go slowly straight away, it'll start to combine all of those ingredients together. So after a few seconds, it will begin to look like this. As you can see, it's quite a big lump, it's come together. It's important to keep scraping down because what will happen is the wetter ingredients will grip the paddle, the drier ingredients will grip the bottom of the bowl. And we don't want that. We want a nice even combined. So just go in there, make sure everything is coming together. And it's quite a firm paste-like consistency at this point. If you can see, this is quite solid. This is not raw icing yet. Okay, this is just a paste. So let's just scrape this off. Now, when you're using any equipment whilst making raw icing, I would advise you to put the pieces like this into a fold of kitchen towel or a fold of a damp tea towel. The reason I do this is because while I'm waiting for the raw icing to mix, that's going to crust. If I then scrape the bowl down again, I'm adding crumbs into my raw icing mix, which is a very bad thing to do. While this is mixing for a few minutes, let's talk about a couple of other things. Once the raw icing is made, completely finished and ready to go, I always transfer it to a clean bowl. I usually get some plastic wrap or saran wrap and lay it on the surface of the raw icing, put another layer over the top and put a damp tea towel on the top of that. What that will do is it will prevent it crusting and preventing drying out, and then I can keep on using it from that bowl. If I'm storing it overnight, I can scrape the bowl down, do exactly the same process. Some people will put a plate on top of the bowl just to give it a bit of a seal. I personally don't store my raw icing in the refrigerator unless we're having an incredibly hot summer. I live in Britain, so that's a very rare scenario, but I do know some of you are in very hot climates. Yes, you can put raw icing in the fridge, but what I would say is take it out first thing in the morning, because raw icing is best used at room temperature. Okay? I don't freeze raw icing. I know there's one or two people who do. I do not. Also, it's worth saying at this point, you've got raw egg albumin in this product. I don't keep my raw icing past 4 or 5 days. I make smaller amounts, I make them more often. If I make a big batch of it and it's standing around, I potentially have got a problem. I could start causing food poisoning, because you wouldn't leave a raw egg out on your counter, would you? Right, let's see how this is doing. Let's turn this off to show you how we're developing this. Now, as you can see now, it's becoming more like raw icing. This is what you're expecting to see. So let's just clean this down a bit. Now, the recipe I'm making here, which is 60 grams of egg white, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, 500 grams of icing sugar, is to make a fairly stiff consistency, because I believe that if I start with a stiff consistency, I can then soften it down to make the other consistencies I might use. So as you can see now, this is coming together, but as I said, it is quite a stiff consistency, and that is on purpose, and that's why I've measured everything. For me, it's far more useful to start with a stiff consistency and then work it from there. Again, keep my equipment covered with a damp cloth. Now, probably got about another minute to go on this, I should imagine, but it is worth testing as we go. Now, you heard me mention their consistency. Now, I get a lot of questions about what is the correct consistency. There isn't really an answer to that question, because the correct consistency will be the consistency for the job you are doing at the time. Also, what is your humidity? What heat are your hands? You've got hot hands, you've got cold hands. All of these do affect consistency of icing. If I've got one bowl of icing and it's the middle of winter, it's going to be firmer than the same bowl of icing at the height of summer, because the colder raw icing is, the firmer it is. The hotter it is, the softer it is. So if I'm holding a bag of icing, I have very hot hands, it's going to get warmer on me. There are 3 main consistencies people talk about, and that's firm peak, soft peak, run out. Run out, sometimes referred to as flood, and we're going to be looking at those as we go along now. So you'll see an indication of what it is. Use those as 3 key markers for what the consistency should be. Also, if you're piping icing, say you're doing borders or string work or pressure piping, you need to adjust your consistency to be the size of the bag that you're using or the size of the piping tip. Because if I'm piping with a very small piping tip, there is no way I'm going to get stiff roll icing through it. If I'm piping with a larger piping bag and a larger piping tip, maybe I can go up and use a firmer peak roll icing. For example, if I'm piping flowers, I will use between soft and firm peak roll icing because I want the icing to keep the consistency so that it'll actually make the flowers look crisper and they'll hold their shape. So let's have a look and see how we were doing here. I did that just to use centrifugal force to take the icing away from the beater. So let's just turn this around because I'm done with you for the moment. So if I look at this now, this is stiff roll icing, stiff peak roll icing. You will see that as I hold it up, see these peaks here? These peaks here, standing up on, holding their shape, this is stiff roll icing or firm peak roll icing. Now, the only times I use firm peak roll icing would be if I'm doing the very first coat of a wedding cake in roll icing, because that would establish the foundation work and it would seal my cake. Other than that, I would use it for piping flowers maybe, but other than that, that's my only uses for it. So, oops, a bit fling over there. So let's transfer this to a glass bowl so you can actually see the different stages I'm working on as I'm working with it. Probably don't need all that actually because I'm going to have to change consistency as we go along. So, get off. Now, whenever you're not working with roll icing, make sure that the bowl is covered with a damp cloth. Very important, it likes to dry out, it likes to crust. That is the nature of roll icing. Let's put that to one side. So, here we have the roll icing. As I said, this is what I would call firm peak roll icing. So if I lift this up, it's going to hold its shape. It's going to, let's see if I can find somewhere you can see it. There you go. It's going to pretty much hold its spike. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. It needs to be firm, hold its shape. That's the stuff that I use for firm peak roll icing. Now, depending on what job I'm doing will depend on how I relax this down to the softer peak. Now, if I'm intending to do work that's going to be part of run-out collars, run-out sections, pieces that are going to be suspended away from the cake, they need the most strength they can possibly have. So I could just take extra egg white or extra albumin to dilute it down. However, normally I can just use little bits of water, and it's usually boiled cooled water I would use, or I tend to use bottled water in the workshop because I know that it's already cold. I don't have to wait around for it to work. Now, do not pick up a jug and just pour water in. You'll find that roll icing changes consistency incredibly quickly. So I tend to use a teaspoon to put it in. I do know that one of the other doctors, Nicholas Lodge, he uses a pump spray of water, and that's another way to soften it down. So I'm just going to work this in, just give it a bit of a stir, just to make sure it's clean down inside. Now obviously, if you were doing a large batch of icing, you wouldn't change consistency in the bowl, you would change it on the machine. But I mean, I've only got probably 250 grams here. So already you can see now, if I try and lift this up now, it's all flopping all over the place. Let's see if I can get you one of the spikes like I had before. Okay, as you can see, it folds over. I sometimes tell my students, this is looking like meringue, or you know, those soft peak ice cream you find, but this to me is soft peak icing. This is the most useful version of icing that you'll probably use. Most people will find they use this to second or third coat their cake. This is what it's easier to pipe borders with because it'll flow really quite nicely out of the end of a piping bag. There you go. Now the next consistency I'm going to look at is actually is flood icing or flow or run out. This is the consistency that I would flood cookies with, that I would actually flood areas of a collar or sections with. I would flood the board or the drum with if I was doing a competition piece. This is flood, flow, run out. All of those are the same thing, you just need to know which one they are. Now, as you saw, I went from firm peak icing to soft peak icing just with 2 teaspoons of water. So be careful. Now, obviously, if you go too far, the answer is add more powdered sugar, and then you'll return it back to its original consistency. Now, when you're making flood or flow, you saw previously that I was beating. Don't beat. Stir this. And the reason I'm stirring it is because I'm trying to incorporate less air. If I incorporate more air, I'm going to have to let this icing sit longer, because the longer it sits, the more the air bubbles will settle out of it. So I've gone past soft and I'm heading towards flood or flow at this moment. That was 1 teaspoonful. It's not quite there yet. And remember, I'm not giving you an exact science here, because every volume is going to require a different liquid added quantity to it to bring it to the consistency you want. So again, I added another teaspoon and I'm just stirring away. Almost there. A bit more of a stir. I think possibly 1 more teaspoon. And yes, I do know I'm making this look easy. To be honest with you, it's experience. Hopefully once you've done it once or twice, you will actually find the right balance of consistency for your hand strength or the projects you're working with. So I would say this is going to do it at this point. Quickly give this a bit of a stir. So I think that's about right, and the reason I think that is because if I now pull, let's tip it up so you can see, if I pull a palette knife through, it's going to flow back into itself and give me a nice even surface. Now you will hear terms like a 10 count or a 15 count. What that means, let's turn it this way, is if I pull this through and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Within 10 counts, this should all merge back together. When I was in college, we used to have what was called 5 knock. So we could do the same thing, lift the bowl up and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it would have the same effect. It would go back to smooth. There are lots and lots of different ways of doing it. Now, I would also say if I'm doing flood work for a run-out collar, I would probably have it slightly softer than this. If I was flooding a cookie, for me I like about this consistency because I don't want too much moisture to soak into my cookie. So remember, this is the consistency of flood or flow. Okay. Now, it's very tempting to make it softer so it flows easier, but the thing is, the easier it flows, the longer it's going to take to dry because more moisture it's got in it. If you have it any thicker than this, you're not going to be able to get it to a nice smooth surface when it's finished. So just play around with this consistency as per the job you're going to do. So we've talked about the ingredients, I've talked about the recipe sheet which you have there. If I was going to add glycerin, what I would do is I would add glycerin when it's at this stage in the bowl. I wouldn't add it at this stage, and I wouldn't be adding it to run out of flow or flood anyway. And what I do is, I think in the recipe here I say up to 2 teaspoons of glycerin. Let me just make sure I've got that right. Okay, for this recipe I've said 1 teaspoon of glycerin for every 500 grams of raw icing. So that's what I'm classing as 500 grams, what I've just done. You could push that as far as 2 teaspoons should you wish. Just be aware that when the cake is dried, and it will be dried, when you cut it, it will then crumble. If you don't put glycerin into the coating of a raw ice cake, it will be really hard work to cut into it. So hopefully that's addressed some questions. We've talked about machines, we've talked about ingredients, we've made the recipe to show you that the recipe I've put online for you actually gives you raw icing as I said it would. I've shown you how to go from stiff peak to soft peak to run out or flood. If there are any other questions, please let me know, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Cakebook Live. Happy piping, guys.